Welcome, everyone, to our Tuesday evening Touch of Torah with Rabbi Barry Silver, and we're thrilled to have all of you joining us and learning some more rational interpretation of the Torah with Va-Dor and Rabbi Silver. And tonight we're going to be talking about a wonderful parsha in Exodus called TETZAVEH. Take it away, Rabbi.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for making this possible. Thank you for all the people who are listening in. And as we exhume the wisdom of our past through the miracle of Zoom. Yes, the passage is called TETZAVEH. And most people are thinking, TETZAVEH, never heard of that. What does that mean? Well, you may not know the word TETZAVEH, but you do know a word related to it called mitzvah. Everybody heard of a mitzvah? Bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. Mitzvah has gone through an evolution. It literally means a commandment. The mitzvot were commanded to do things. Our ancestors did them because they believed that God commanded them to do it. It wasn't necessarily what they wanted to do. It wasn't necessarily what they thought they should do to be morally correct. They did it because God commanded it. And originally, they did it out of fear. They did not want to get punished for violating a commandment, and they wanted to be rewarded for following it. But today, we've evolved. Just like a kid. A kid, don't cross the street. You'll get in trouble. The kid doesn't realize, oh, I could lose my life. The kid just knows the parents said don't do it, better not do it, or maybe I won't get dessert. So the kid obeys. Later, the kid internalizes and does it because it's the right thing to do. Same thing's true of the mitzvah. A Jewish person today, modern Jews, Cosmic Jews, Reform, Reconstructionists, Conservative, we don't do it because God told us to. Well, some people still do. But we do it because we want to do a mitzvah. We want to do the right thing. We enjoy helping. TETZAVEH means, and you were commanded, and they go through Moses, some of the commandments that were given to the people. Two of them are very, very significant. One is the commandment of the eternal light. Don't let that flame go out because it symbolizes love, the light of reason, the light of love. Do you think there's a time when we should not be governed by love? Is there a time when the light of reason should be ignored? No. It's the Ner Tamid, the eternal light. That's the most significant thing. The light of love, of reason never goes out. It was associated with God in the past, and for many, it still is. And that's okay. But a modern interpretation is that there should never be a time in our lives or in the life of this nation and our world where reason and love don't govern. Some people say, oh, that's politics. Keep love out of it. Can you keep love out of decisions that affect our health, our lives, our well-being, helping the disadvantaged? Is there a time when we say, okay, now let's get down to business and forget all that? I don't think so. Is there a time in our lives when we should get rid of these things? No. That's the eternal light. Now, there's also in this passage rules that take up more time or more verses, but they're not as significant. What does the priest wear? His holy vestments, the breastplate, something called an ephod, different things that he wears. Spent a lot of time on that, but I don't think it's as important. But here's what I do think is important. The eternal light speaks to us today. Why? Well, we've seen recently that Russia has put to death Putin's enemy, Navalny, Alexei Navalny. The world mourns his passage. He was courageous, an intrepid fighter for the light of truth and of reason. A comedian. He was funny even under dire circumstances. As such a, excuse me. Will the light of freedom go out because he was assassinated? No. Will his light of love and joy go out? No. The light of freedom burns brightly and will continue to burn brightly because of his example. It will grow more brightly because of what he stood for. We celebrate his life, and we know that despite our sadness, something good will emerge. That's based, my friends, on faith. Is it blind faith? No, it's rational faith. Let me explain. During the darkest days of the Holocaust, there was a great hero. His name was Tuvia Bielski. He said, freedom begins with an act of defiance. He defied the Nazis, killed some Nazis, even though he was a partisan fighter, killed some refugees to help in the war effort. Didn't just save his own skin, he saved the lives of many, many others. He was a war hero and he survived the war with his brothers. Look him up. Tuvia means good. Bielski. Look him up, Tuvia Bielski. He proves to us that even the darkest enemies of our people in the world will not prevail against the eternal light, the eternal flame. The Americas, the United States, it looked like we were going to lose to Britain in the Revolutionary War, but we had the Liberty Bell. The Liberty Bell is from the book of Leviticus. Let freedom ring throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. That's the motto of the United States, and it's based on Jewish ideals and precepts. We should be proud of that. Has liberty been extinguished? No. They've tried to many times. Even today, our liberties appear threatened. People say, oh no, I hope we'll survive this time. I have faith. Millions of us have faith. We know that the light of freedom and liberty won't be extinguished because we've seen throughout history that it cannot be. The Statue of Liberty. It is adorned by words from a Jewish authoress, Emma Lazarus. Give me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Immigration, it's under threat. We believe in immigration in America, but we also believe in rules and common sense and in doing things in an intelligent way, not just opening up the floodgates and having no regulations. Congress is trying to do something about it. I believe we will succeed. We've failed. We must be candid and say both political parties have failed in the past. Regardless of what party we belong to, they both failed. But recently we've realized this is crazy, this is untenable. The light of freedom reflected by the Statue of Liberty will burn brightly, but let us also let it burn rationally and have rational rules and regulations that make sense. The Warsaw Ghetto, how horrific, people living under the most dire circumstances. They fought back. Did they win? Some people would say, no, they lost. Warsaw Ghetto uprising was a failure. The Nazis killed most of them. Some escaped. It was not a failure. They flew the Jewish flag. They flew the flag of resistance. They showed that the Nazis will not prevail because the power of love will defeat the love of power. The light, the eternal flame of the Torah will not go out. We're celebrating Purim soon. Mordechai. What did Mordechai do? He said, I don't bow down to a human being. That would plunge us into darkness. I believe in the light of love, of freedom. I'm free. I bow to no person. I yield only to my sense of right and wrong. Reason. In those days, it was the eternal God. Modern Jews might say, I bow down, I give homage, as Jefferson said, to the homage of reason, the tribunal of justice, Jewish values of kindness, of love, of peace, compassion, mercy. I will yield my will to those ideals, but not to a human being, especially a sick, demented human being who thinks everyone should bow down to him. The light of reason and of love reflected in the eternal light of Judaism will burn brightly forever. It's an important symbol reflected in the Torah thousands of years ago and still found in synagogues throughout the nation. And if you don't belong to a synagogue with walls, you can see that light burn brightly every Shabbat when we light 2 candles, the light of love and of reason. You'll still see those eternal lights burning brightly. And I'm thrilled to belong to a congregation where that light continues to burn. You know, we have people in our congregation who don't agree with each other. They don't agree with the rabbi. They don't agree with any particular political party. They might belong to diverse parties, ways of looking at things, and guess what? That makes us strong. We have an ideology at Va-Dor. We've turned it Cosmic Judaism. It believes in rational thinking. I hope everyone here believes in rational thinking. But we invite, we welcome, we cherish other points of view because we believe that dialogue, the ability to disagree agreeably, the overcoming of the dislike of the unlike will form a crucible that brings out the truth And that's what we strive for. The light of truth and of reason, referred to in the Torah as truth, emet, righteousness, tzedek, emet v'tzedek. That's what we're all about. It's a pleasure to share some words with you from this Torah reading. We will go into this also on Friday night, this Friday, where you will see something quite remarkable. You will see presented a peace plan which will guarantee peace and security for Israel. It will guarantee peace and security for Gaza and the Palestinians and the Druze and the Bedouin, who make up the most diverse population, the antithesis of apartheid, the joining together of groups. You will see a peace plan that ends the reign of Hamas and demands and can bring about the release of all the hostages that they have tomorrow. You will see it. You will hear it. And you can be part of supporting it, because we need peace in Gaza and in Israel. Israel finally formed a homeland for the Jewish people after 2,000 years. And I know everybody listening here, everyone at Va-Dor, and hopefully all Jewish people will agree. We aren't going anywhere. We've survived a lot of empires and people who tried to destroy us, and we'll survive these dark days as well. Not only survive, but if the international community agrees to isolate terror and isolate Hamas, withdraw all military support of it, all social support of it, all UN support of Hamas, all financial support of Hamas, ends it, there will be no more Hamas. Oh, yes, you may find some people who might affiliate, like after World War II, there were some neo-Nazis in Germany, but the country became a democracy. Like Japan, you might find some people who, like on Gilligan's Island, they're hiding in a cave. 40 years later, these kamikaze guys, these Japanese. But the country, it became a democracy, our closest ally. Why is that? It's just further proof. The light of reason and love will not be extinguished. Those are the only comments that I have to make, other than the fact that on Friday night, you'll also see interfaith leaders pitching the peace plan, which gives it more credibility, more oomph. In order to achieve triumph, we must try and give it some oomph, and give it some oomph from different backgrounds. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Challenge, debate, agree with, supplement, augment, enhance? Go right ahead.
Anybody else want to share anything? Valerie, go ahead.
Oh, me? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
no?
Well, all right, I'll say something. Well, a couple of perspectives that I have that, and I know the rabbi and I have had some discussions, and I agree with you that you can disagree respectfully, and you can listen to other people. And while you don't agree with them, you can understand their perspective and their points of view, which is what I try to do. Sometimes it gets very difficult.
You succeed all the time, Valerie.
There's one thing when you said about the in Poland, the wall, the Berlin, the wall, and talking about World War II and the light of the light and raising the flag. I mean, the reason that the Nazis were defeated because all of the other countries had the weapons to defeat them. Period. No guns, no weapons, the Nazis would have reigned. And I think while you have to mix in the desire and the want of normal people to want freedom, freedom to live, freedom to speak, freedom to practice their religion, if it wasn't for the firepower, if you will, of the nations, including many of the Arabic countries during World War II, joined that effort. And while we all prayed and we all wanted to believe in God, it was the weapons and it was the fight that defeated the Nazis. Okay, that's my perspective from that. With regard to what's going on
Wait,
now,
can I comment on that first?
sure.
I agree with you. Sadly, you're right. Until the world mobilized militarily, they would have lost. And we would have been in darkness. But the darkness wouldn't have lasted forever, but the Jewish people could have been wiped out. So I agree with that. But remember also, it was weapons and it was people, courageous people, one of whom is a friend of mine, Bill Schwartz, who lives at Sinai Residences, who was a hero of D-Day. People, courageous people, use those weapons, manufacture those weapons, mobilize for the weapons. But you're right, I agree 100%. Without the military power, it wouldn't have happened. And if we dry up, never send any military assistance to Hamas, never provide assistance to terrorists, then terrorism will not prevail. So I agree with the first point. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, but again, even if let's say it's the UN and all of the Western cultures and the Western countries, and that's starting to happen now, and unfortunately, and I know all of us feel for this, and our heart breaks on both sides, in Gaza, in Israel, and all those innocent lives that are at stake. I mean, we
Thank
all
you.
feel this, and we all feel the same way. But even with the UN and all of the other Western countries denying aid, if you will, or medical attention, or the UNICEF, the countries like Iran are going to continue to support these groups. So the Western world, even though we might deny them the assistance on every level, somewhere they're going to find it. And until we address those nations, those sovereign nations that support terrorism, I think we're fighting a losing battle.
Well, Va-Dor has a solution to that too. It's called rational religion. Why does Iran do what it does? Did some kid wake up one day and say, I'm going to be an evil, nasty, malicious, cold-blooded killer? No, they were trained, indoctrinated, brainwashed into irrational religion. That's why we need to push rational faith, and you will defeat Iran without lifting a weapon. Go ahead. What else?
Well, I mean, that's well said and very idealistic, because the reality of that is you cannot, according to law, quote unquote, international law, you cannot interfere with the sovereignty of another government and another state. So changing their ways, if you will, since they are a religious state, is going to be very, very problematic and is not going to be readily addressed. We all know that, though we wish it. We know that's not going to be the case. So that's my opinion on that. Strength in numbers, strength in military, strength to oppose. Brute force on occasion does work. We've
Yes, it
seen
does.
that. Brute force does have its place, and I think we all
All
have
right.
to realize that. Also, I want to know your opinion, Rabbi, getting slightly off the topic. It came out just a little while ago. There was a ballerina in Russia today that was arrested for espionage. She was a ballerina. She had a dual citizenship, I believe, United States and Russia. And she was arrested today for quote unquote being a spy. It was on the news just at 6:30. I was shocked. I mean, reminded me of the 1940s and 50s of Mata Hari, the dancer who was accused of being a spy. But here was this beautiful ballerina being arrested in Russia. It was amazing. I wanted to know your opinion on that, and your opinion now with the fact that some of our government, and this is really scary, is wanting to have unfertilized eggs in vitro declared as life. I mean, did you hear that? How ridiculous that was? And I would like your
Well,
opinion
thank
on
you
it.
so much. You could probably predict my response to both arresting ballerinas by Russia. Um, can you see my thumb? Maybe. No, that's bad news. I am glad you brought up this Supreme Court decision in Alabama, because all they did, the court, all it did and the legal system was to follow the argument of what I call the pro-lie, not pro-life, the pro-life position to its logical extreme. If you're going to be irrational and disregard science and just say, well, my religion says human life begins at conception, then of course, if you have IVF, in vitro fertilization, where you take eggs and fertilize them and store up a whole bunch and then implant them until one becomes a human being eventually. You'll have a whole bunch of other ones that you don't need anymore. Well, if you consider that to be a human being, now you're going to have to murder all these human beings and create a Holocaust. It's ridiculous. But that is the logical extension of this argument, to suggest that this idea that human life begins with conception and base it on the Bible, it's a misconception, because that's not what the Bible teaches. It's not what Judaism teaches, and it's not Christianity taught. And for most of its existence, until about the 1860s, when they decided, let's control the lives of women and say that this is now a human being, and now you have to do what we tell you to do when it comes to sexuality, because we don't like sexuality. It allows people to feel joy and goodness and happiness outside of the confines of the church. We want to control everything, even the marital relationship and the womb. That is why the state of Florida is in great jeopardy. We heard oral arguments about 2 weeks ago regarding placing abortion on the ballot as a ballot initiative. The Supreme Court had to listen to find out, is the language used for the people to vote on comprehensible? If they can't understand what they're voting on, the language is invalid. The effort to pass a constitutional amendment is invalid, and the people lose their right to say. The Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court was at that oral argument where they tried to argue, is it valid, is it comprehensible or not? And he said, we have this thing called Article 1, Section 2, which is similar to what they have in Alabama. It says that you can't pass any laws that deprive a human being of their right to life. Well, he wanted to know, does this language violate a human being's right to life? Well, first you have to figure out, what is a human being? Is it a fetus from day 1, the 6th week, 15th week, birth, When does, and I shouldn't say fetus, starts out as what we call a zygote, and then a blastocyst, and then it's an embryo, and then it becomes a fetus. When does this entity, as it goes through different stages, become human life? And guess what the Chief Justice said of the Supreme Court? The guy who knows more about the laws of Florida supposedly than anyone, he says, beats me. Because I've been wrestling with that for a long time. I don't know. Then you have the Florida legislature and the governor's office who don't want this language used. These are the highest, not legal judiciary, but executive and the legislative branch. They were representing the state of Florida. And the justice asked the representative of Florida, well, what do you think? When does human life begin? Now, the Chief Justice was honest, yet rather surprising. He doesn't know. The state of Florida said, beats me. I don't know either. And not only that, the two attorneys representing the state of Florida said, never thought about it before. Are these maybe the only people in the world or in the nation or in Florida who never thought about when life begins? Especially if you come to argue a case dealing with abortion. And gee, I've never thought of that before. This, my friends, regardless of what party you belong to, is an eclipse, a total eclipse of the light of reason. And because of that, you have absurdities. In contrast, Jewish people know when life begins. And it's not when the last kid leaves home and graduates from law school or medical school. That's not when life begins. We know that life begins in Jewish law, biblical law, the law that affects Jewish and Christian jurisprudence at birth. Why do I say that? Look on our website. Look at my affidavit. I've explained it ad nauseum. And in my condition, I don't need any more nausea. So don't worry about it. Go on our website and find out that I quote chapter and verse, Genesis, Exodus, Ezekiel, Maimonides, the modern interpretations, and modern science. Human life is like evolution. Consciousness, human life evolved in the womb, just like it evolved in evolution over millions of years. You want a fancy way to say it? Phylogeny recapitulates ontogeny. Or rather, I believe it's the verse. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, which means the development of the fetus replicates the development of the various life forms from the most beginning to the most advanced. Is it an exact duplication? No, but it's pretty darn close. We start out in the womb in water. We have gills. We have a tail. We look like a fish, a salamander, a reptile, an amphibian, a simian, rapid brain growth. It has trouble fitting through the woman's womb, which is why it's harder for humans to give birth than other species. Then you have a human being. Look it up. Science has the answer. Thanks, Valerie.
Also, I just
Anybody else?
wanted to do an update. I was just reading this, that ballerina I mentioned before. The
Yeah.
reason they arrested her is because she made a charitable donation to a Ukrainian, I think it was the Red Cross or some Ukrainian charity to help children. And that's why they arrested her as
How
a treason.
horrible. I could see that should be a criminal offense. How ridiculous. Thank you,
Alan,
everyone, for
I think
participating.
I think Alan had his hand raised
Oh,
before.
go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, Rabbi, I read through the portion and for the week, and it seemed to me like the whole portion was God speaking to his people and telling his people what to do in meticulous detail to prove their love to him. Now, from beginning to end, I didn't see any part of it that wasn't in that vein. And it really made me very sad. You know, because people accept that as God's word when it's not.
Well,
It's
yeah. Well, I agree with you that it was our ancestors' best effort to understand what God wanted. But we have to realize in those days, they didn't have much tools to figure out what is God, who is he, what does he want? But they lived in a very regulated society with a monarch and with priestly classes. So they figured God must be like the most powerful figure we can conjure up in our mind. And they must have a lot of rules and regulations that we must follow. So their way of understanding how to be good was to follow the rules. Your parents tell you something, you do what they say. But I agree with you that it doesn't seem to flow right. That's why we have Cosmic Judaism. That's why we've evolved and adapted our understanding. Are you getting background noise?
no, it's clear.
Good. All right. But I agree with you, Alan. That's why there's a need to adapt and to change as we grow and learn and develop. And each one of us has the capacity to take our surroundings and to continue that. Your view, my view, the view of others will be different, but we're all moving forwards, hopefully, to advance human progress.
No, we're all Jews, Rabbi, but so many of the Jews take this as God's word. They believe this and they're taught this, and it's just like any other extreme religion. It's no different from what the Muslims are being taught, except they're more violent. But
Well, thank you. There was a saying that I like from Goldwater. He says something like, extremism in defense of liberty is no vice, and moderation in pursuit of justice is no virtue. I think we should think about that when we talk about extremism. If someone's extremely nice, extremely peaceful, extremely devoted to seeking justice, usually they'll be okay, although you can take that to an extreme. Like mother love can become smother love. And usually, if you're moderate in your pursuit of justice, that's not really such a good thing. You want to get involved. So, what I say is not necessarily moderation or extremism, rational or irrational. If someone is meticulously rational, I got no problem with them. If they're extremely irrational, watch out. That's the demarcation. Rational or irrational. That's why we cling meticulously at Va-Dor to rational. And people might think, Rabbi, you take it to an extreme. You're too extreme. Let people believe what makes them feel good. Everybody's welcome to believe what they want. But I think the more rational we are, the less chance we have of having groups like Hamas, Iran, Putin take over. By the way, do you know what MAGA stands for? MAGA? It stands
Make
for
America Great Again.
Make America great again.
mutinous, anti-government, anarchists. That's what it stands for. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
My
So-
son is calling in from University of Florida.